So this is the first episode of Banter with Friends, and I have my friend here. We're at a park, and we're going to discuss Canadian political issues and whatnot. So,
Hi. So today we're thinking of starting off at least with the hijab ban in Quebec.
yeah, what's your opinion on it?
I honestly don't understand what's going on, but I was reading that the whole thing has been blown a little out of proportion, and when I looked into it, the actual law seems a little less crazy. Apparently it's not every person who uses the bus services, but it's actually just the employees of the bus services, which feels a lot less intense, but I still think is problematic. I feel like the goal isn't to be like, I don't know, I feel like self-determination is what allows people to grow into healthier, happier lives. And I feel like just assuming that every woman in a hijab feels oppressed is it's just bad news bears. I think it's a bad assumption.
But it's not the first time that Quebec tries to pass this type of law. They had the religious symbol law.
Mm-hmm.
That got thrown out of them. But now here's my opinion that I've been forming, and actually might surprise you.
Okay.
I think that they should be allowed to wear whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
Not on the basis of their religion, but on the basis of just like their liberty of choice.
Yeah.
However, I think that if they enter private property and they have a policy of no covered faces, that's where I think it definitely changes.
You mean if someone has a rule on their private property of no covered faces?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, what if somebody shows up to your house in a ski mask? You're going to be a little concerned.
Right. Fair enough.
So that's my opinion on it.
I mean, I think obviously if it's your private property, you can have your own say on it. My personal feelings are that actually they're pretty close to yours. Except I just do feel that I do like to include the intention. Like, I understand that the intention is to be like, this is what we value as Canadians. We value greater equality among the genders. But also at the same time, we've got a long way to go, and I still think there's so many things we don't really understand about equality between genders that it seems a little presumptuous to start telling the rest of the world. It's like when America goes overseas and says, let's spread democracy. Here we are in Quebec saying, let's tell everybody what gender equality looks like. It's a little presumptuous to me.
Well, the party that did that is not the usual culprits of that kind of thing. Cause
What do you mean by who's the usual culprits? Just
like the Liberals.
Oh yeah. But it's only since Trudeau, right, that the Liberals are like this.
But it's actually the Parti Québécois that was pushing this.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Is it to me? It's not like. To me, the Liberals bring up nitpicky things when it serves a very socially progressive agenda, and this to me doesn't seem like a socially progressive agenda. This seems more like a nationalist agenda, which is why it doesn't surprise me that's the Parti Québécois. This is more like this is our country and you live by our rules than it is, let's make sure we save you. And maybe that's where I'm a little wrong on that. But.
No, I could see the point. Yeah, definitely. Like how it has to do with nationalism, especially relating to Quebec.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other European countries that are, if I think it's Belgium, if I'm not wrong, or France that banned like burkinis or stuff like that.
France did. I don't know if Belgium, but France definitely did, and France definitely has that kind of that nationalist. It's like a mix of social progressivism and nationalism, where it's like look at how progressive we are here, and you have to, and we're, but it's not like a tolerance. I don't know. I mean, I guess they might argue that allowing the hijab would be tolerating intolerance, which is a bit silly. But
I've heard that
again,
argument before.
you know what I mean?
The tolerance for the intolerant.
But to me, I think it's just problematic from the perspective of saying that every woman who wears hijab is oppressed.
I would say, I coming from a perspective that I don't know, like, the individual women involved. Like, I honestly don't. I haven't ever
Yeah.
met a person that wears hijab.
Hmm.
I think that there will be some that are willing and like to wear a niqab, but I am sure that there's, just from my opinion, I think that there must be a silent majority of people who don't want to wear it.
Well, and then the problem too is that right. It's like, well, how can you appreciate, if someone comes here from another country where they had no choice and they just kind of learned to live with it, and here, it's kind of unspoken that they have a choice, right? But
Yeah.
like how is that a choice? If their whole life has been oriented towards that, how is that a choice? But to me, even in those situations, the best thing to do is not to force anybody to make any decisions. Because the other thing too, right, is like, whether you, in all of those cases, whether you're comfortable with it or not, whether you have a choice or not, it's such like an intimate thing for the government to be having a say in.
Yeah, and that's why I oppose it. Like, because, well,
It's kind of, because for those people who feel that they're not allowed to reveal themselves, or those who feel that it's a genuine expression of modesty that they're comfortable with, it's kind of like saying you gotta bare yourself a little bit. You gotta show some skin, and that to me is just the fact that people don't see it in that way. It just, to me, seems like we really don't understand what hijab means, and what the diversity of relationships that women
but
have
it's
with
it's
hijab.
not the hijab though. It's like the niqab and the burqa.
Oh, okay.
And
I thought it was a hijab ban.
no, it's not a hijab ban. It's
Okay.
it's a niqab and burqa ban. It's like
Okay.
it's like the
full body
the full
covering.
face covering.
Yeah.
And I can see the sort of safety concerns that could arise from that.
But I don't know. I didn't hear much about safety concerns for that, but
Well, I don't know if it was. I may be wrong, but I remember that there was a gang in Toronto that came in and robbed a corner store, and they were all men dressed with niqabs, and they like pulled out gun from there.
yeah. Well, when you put it that way, it starts to become more complicated, because it's like, how do we manage this kind of unconventional threat in our society? Like, it's,
I mean, it's one case, but it's kind of ingenious. Like,
no, of course, but I don't know. It's interesting. I would like to think that the reason there aren't that many copycats are because it just seems outlandish or something. I don't know. There's a part of me that just likes to think there's a good reason why we don't see a whole bunch of people doing that, and we can kind of put our minds at ease a little bit with that.
I mean, we could play devil's advocate. You're at the bank,
Yeah, of course.
and somebody rolls in, fully covered, wearing a ski mask.
Hmm.
You're gonna be a little on edge. Now, is that xenophobic? I don't know.
Well, I mean, it is to some extent, but I don't know. It's the kind of thing that's like, it's like we were talking the other day, right? I grew up in a suburb of a city where the population was, until very recently, 80%, basically 80% non-visible minorities.
Okay.
Or sorry, 80% Caucasian or not visible minorities, right? And so the kind of media that I consumed was very typical in the 90s, and the portrayal of visible minorities in the 90s in this country was, I mean, it was just very, very, very superficial for whatever reason. I'm sure there were some people who felt that they were better just because of the fact that they were white, and some people who just really didn't know, you know? And so from that perspective, I was raised on those things, and so I'm a little conditioned sometimes even to be nervous around, to kind of see a picture of a black man in like gangsta clothing as somewhat threatening, as potentially threatening.
Well, that was what you were talking about, how black businesses don't really have that, that same stigma, because it's kind of more commonplace.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's almost like, because I saw that it's a problem, but I imagine that a black-run business would, because they recognize that they've seen so many people walk like that, the things that are going on unconsciously, whether it's the animal brain or something that helps them understand like who this person is. Are they a threat? Is there a concern? Or maybe they don't even have to think about that because it's just so obvious that there's not an issue until there's an issue. Like it's a totally different brain process. Right. One that I'm just not accustomed to. And for sure, I'm sure the same sort of fear is happening with the hijab. Even though, I didn't really see a lot of media with like the niqab, full niqab burqa thing. Well, besides news media, but like I didn't see, as a kid, you would see like dangerous black gangsters all the time on TV, but you didn't really see a lot of niqab and burqa. But at the same time, a full body covering can be kind of intimidating. Yeah. If you don't, what we don't see can be kind of scary. I don't know. That's hard to say.
You can hear the firemen. My house is burning down. To be honest, I don't see that they're like. I'm not really a fan of this whole like that. Characters need to be diverse. Like, there's already like. I can think about like movies or books where there was like before the diversity era. Like what I'm trying to say here before I say this is like that you don't see like people in hijab or niqab portrayed in media. But regardless of that, like there's been like characters like that were black and were cool before this. Like I don't know, I'd throw like Ken and Kel. Did you ever watch that show, or like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and stuff like that?
Yeah, I like the Fresh Prince, but I'm sure the Fresh Prince is held as an example. But you're talking about like an extreme minority of pieces, right? You're an extreme minority of media literature. I understand the need for more diversity, and I actually enjoy usually more diversity, and I think statistics show that diversity, that shows that include a little more diversity actually do better. The thing is that the outrage about it would be kind of better put into creation, like if you're upset about it, go and do something about it. Go and fuel, let that like anger fuel you to grow as a creative person. Find whatever your creative world is and create. And if it's angry creativity, then do that. But I just feel that in the end, nowadays, anger just turns to like shaming and policing, and it's just not going to get anywhere because we're not all going to agree about things. We're not all going to be on the same page. But let me tell you, we'll all, if you create a good show, a good movie, a good piece of fiction, a good, if you create something really good with a diversity of people, and nobody has a reason to think that their thoughts are to be shamed or that their thoughts are bad, then they're just going to read your stuff and they're going to get sucked in and their minds are going to change, their perspective's going to change.
But I think the forced diversity is what really ruins things. Like, look at Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
Like how they made Thor into a woman. Like they kind of like force this diversity onto their comics, and their sales have bombed. But then if you look at Wonder Woman,
the comic sales have been bombing for a while.
I guess so. But take I loved Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
I thought it was amazing.
Wonder Woman was huge. Yeah, even when it first came out.
But
They struggled. I did see the movie. Yeah.
I thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
Like, and you know what? I saw a meme about it that was actually like, isn't Wonder Woman great? And then somebody replies, no, it's not. No, and then it's like, but why? And it's like, because it's training kids to expect decent movies from DC.
I like that. I understand the concern about it, but in my experience, limitations sometimes bring out the best in creative people. And the thing is I think right now we have a lot of shitty media going on. A lot of lowbrow movies, a lot of really lowbrow is not very, very nice way to put it, but I feel like most of the movies we're creating are just meant to appeal to the broadest, simplest group of people, as many people as possible. And when you do that and then you say, well, I want diversity in that, then it's a big stress because it's like, well, that's the opposite, right? But if instead you say, look, I want to create like a real work of art, and yeah, I'm going to create it based on a character that already exists, and then I'm going to add this really interesting and difficult limitation, which is that I'm going to change the gender or the race of this individual and create a really rich and compelling character. I think that's an exciting prospect. I think that's something that could be really powerful, And yeah, people are going to complain when you're using old characters because, again, they're looking for kind of the laziest connection, right? Like if you have a comic book character that you've loved and they make a movie of it, you can complain or you can love it, but the point is you love it anyways because you're filling it with all the richness that came before it, So it's kind of a lazy way to create movies because they don't really have to create anything. It's like when they did the Harry Potter movies, you practically didn't even know what happened in the Harry Potter movies unless you read the books.
I didn't even watch them. I think I watched like the first two because I was a kid back then. But
the first one was the worst for things like that. But yeah, look, I think there's not a problem necessarily with the push for diversity. I kind of like it. It's kind of refreshing. And the other thing is too though is that when we push for diversity, we also have to push for diversity even within the things that we consider common. Like white men in we're stuck on superhero movies, but
you're a
white men in superhero movies are just so annoying. They all talk the same. They all have the same little pieces of ego that all interact the same way. They're making little insinuations about the size of their genitals even. Even in the Avengers, like they never explicitly say it because the rating would have to go up, and then it wouldn't be for the broadest audience, but they kind of say things about their prowess or some sort of strength or something, and it's like, for fuck's sake, I don't really care anymore. So yeah, I kind of like the push for diversity, but I think we gotta be wary that like just changing the character's race or just changing the character's gender is a recipe for failure. Look, create a rich story, dive into something, be a little deeper than just the same kind of scripted jokes that make every single person at least go breathe out a little harder, if not chuckling.
be honest, I think that this push to diversity will go away, though. Like
I think it will too, but I. Sorry, go ahead.
like the thing is that right now it's like a popular topic, like and people want to cast a wide net, and then at the end of the day, it's all business for these people. I don't think they actually care about like whether
No, of course.
black people are being represented. I mean, Asian people, women, etc.
Yeah.
I just think that they're trying to like, oh well, this is a cash cow now. I'm gonna take the cash cow and profit.
Well, but the thing is too, like I don't think there's a problem with that too much. I think that's like a more of a broader concern about how we relate to corporations. You know, if we're comfortable with corporations being psychopathic money machines, and I think it's maybe okay for them to be that as long as we're aware of that. But like if they are money making machines, then we just got to make sure that they're making the stuff that we want and that we really change what we're consuming. You know, because like you said, it's a big cash cow, right?
Yeah.
Now the only thing is that too, that in that argument is that there's a feedback loop that is constantly shaping. There's like this shaping of our ideas and our consumption that occurs on the side of the corporation. So I guess it's a little more complicated. But I do agree that this diversity push is perhaps a little bit of a trend, but I think it's also just helping to weed out the like really nasty kind of racist thoughts that we still have. You know, it's really kind of pushing us to dig a little deeper. Even those of us who think there's nothing wrong with people of other skin colors, you know, being our friends, but going a little deeper and being like, okay, but is there a part of you that can be just a little dismissive, you know, about certain qualities because they are like this? You know, because they do something that makes you feel that they are this personality trait or whatnot. It's very abstract, I think, to talk about it like this, but I think there is value to this kind of trendy push right now. But I agree that it is a temporary thing.
I mean, going back to the whole premise of this, say that a Muslim woman that wears the niqab or the thing is a productive member of society. I don't really have a problem with their choice, as long as this is the one but that I have with this. As long as they're not forcing their family members, or forcing their children, or forcing strangers to wear what they're wearing. You do you, man. Whatever. Like, if you want, like, did you hear about this guy who wore spaghetti strainer on his license because he was a pastafarian? So he had the government, like, he went to the
like the place you get your license.
Yeah, that place, and I think it was in BC actually. They told him no, you can't do that, and then he came back and he got like some documents about his religion, and he's in the license picture. He's wearing a spaghetti strainer.
Like on the front of his face?
No, in his head.
Oh.
It's actually hilarious. But if he's contributing and like he's not doing anything illegal and he's not forcing anybody to wear a spaghetti strainer on their head, I think that's fine.
Yeah. But forcing children, the only thing I felt a little weird about, you talked about forcing your children. Because in some ways it's not really, like at what point does it become forcing and at what point is it just teaching them the structure of life that has served you, you know? Well, like if niqab, think of it this way, right? Like, why do we wear anything? Because it makes us feel something specific that's useful. And if you have a niqab and a burqa and you really feel like it's the thing for you, as best as you can, you know, as much as you know it's something that provides for you, then why wouldn't you be teaching your children to live that way? Unless you felt that there was a better way, but you didn't have the courage to live it. But I don't know if anybody feels like that. That might be just my total ignorance on the issue, you know. But from my perspective, like, if you feel that genuinely it is an expression of modesty that empowers you in your life, then why wouldn't you be teaching your children that?
I mean, we teach like we teach others what we know, right? But I still don't think that. Did I tell you when I came to Canada, I was given like a little pamphlet that it was basically the do's and the don'ts,
Nice.
and it was like it's funny because I came from another Western society, so it like to me
Right, of course.
to me this seemed extremely irrelevant, but like in the pamphlet it was like don't try to marry people like in exchange, like don't try to force your children to marry other children, don't try to like.
Interesting.
It's like in Canada it's a liberal society, so if you see a woman not wearing a lot of clothes, don't shout something at her or
Yeah.
and it's kind of funny that I think that the society as a whole is kind of aware of this problem that certain cultures, I wouldn't say are incompatible, but they don't have no idea that like
There's some interface issues there.
that, and I think that that's like the big issue with, I don't know, like modesty is based on morality, and morality for me is like kind of subjective. I mean,
But again, sometimes you have this situation, right, where a feeling of empowerment comes from something that for someone feels empowered by doing something, living in a certain way that seems totally bogus to you. And I feel that if we are tolerant of a woman who decides to live that way, and of course there's only so much we can do to know if it's her choice or her husband's choice, but if a woman is tolerant, feels that empowers her, then she should do that. But I think that her kids growing up, even if they're forced to wear a full burqa and niqab, even if they were forced to wear that at school, it would be unlikely that those children would not kind of, through interacting with other children their age, it would be unlikely that they can't find a certain measure of empowerment through a different way of life, because they see it around them. It's just like empathy, in their formative years, they would be surrounded by people who are living that way. I think it would be very difficult to keep a very narrow perspective of empowerment without some sort of violence, which obviously is an issue that everybody here would agree is.
I do think that Canada gives you a lot of choices, and it kind of subtly hints, like especially when you come here and they give you that pamphlet, and it's not the only thing that they give you. It's like when you go to register for your SIN number and stuff like that, they you talk with a social worker, and then they tell you like, do you want to change your name, or do you want to live the same person you were when you came? Would you like to change your gender? All types of things, and it's like this is kind of like subtly suggesting that you can live a new life away from whatever your former culture was.
Right.
So I think that a lot of people who don't are either ignorant of the fact that they can live a different way, or they're forced to.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm not a Muslim, and I don't know. I would find it painfully annoying to wear a niqab or a burqa.
Right. I think I would feel the same way, but I don't think that necessarily has much relevance to how they feel. I saw a video of young, I know it's just hijab, but of young women who born and raised in Canada and in the United States, talking about what it means for them to wear hijab. And some of them some of them feel it's just a nice kind of fashion statement from their religion. Some of them feel that it's a modesty that makes them feel safe and warm, and there's like a whole diversity of experiences related to that.
My problem is with those videos is that they never show the flip side. What about all those women that don't want to?
Well, I think first off, we know that there are women who don't want to, and if they don't want to, they generally leave the religion, usually because their whole experience of the religion involves an oppression, right? And then those that don't, it's because they're still stuck in that oppressive state, and it's probably not easy to reach them, considering that they're stuck in those oppressive rules.
Well, I might be wrong, but I've heard a couple stories firsthand from some people that left that religion, and they told me that it was very difficult for them because it took them years to reconnect with their family, because a lot of them like shunned them for a really long time. And even this individual that we know who is friends with that person that I used to date, she came from Europe, from a European country that now has almost a Muslim majority, and she talks about how like she's into this like new age spiritualism type shit, and she talks about how her family, who are primarily Muslims, are very upset with her, and she's the same one that lives that libertine lifestyle. And
Right. But the thing is that I don't feel we can. I don't feel we can change the family except to kind of live the best lives we can live, and also to recognize that the best lives we can live involves a relationship with our community, which has wavered a lot. And if you build relationships with various communities, then you create an opening for someone who feels that they are trapped to escape, because they feel like, and yes, it's probably more difficult because we're not as we're not as comfortable connecting with people. It's like when people don't look like us, it's a whole massive barrier of connection for many of us, right?
yeah,
But
I could agree to that.
But I think that like if we really try, to me that's got to be the strength of Canada. That's got to be the strength of Canada that helps us survive culturally. The number of refugees we take in, the number of, and particularly the number of refugees coming in from countries where we have very, very different kind of standards of gender roles.
Well, speaking of refugees, do you hear that JT is going on a deportation spree, though?
What do you mean?
Like, I'm not sure.
Because it only lasts so long. They only get like a year and a half or something to try and get their permanent residency or something.
Yeah, but a lot of the requirements are pretty basic, like learning English or French or I don't actually remember, but I know that that's one of the requirements. But they're fairly basic.
Well, if they're fairly basic, don't get too much joy in hating on JT. If they're fairly basic, then there's a failure, right? But if there's a failure, let's not. I think you like to hate on JT, and if there's a failure, you got to remember that something like 40% of the refugees were sponsored privately in this country.
No,
Right.
I think that's a great thing. Like, I mean...
No, but I'm saying, like, the responsibility is shared. Like, we can't be like, oh, JT fucked up the refugee situation, right? Like, that's kind of silly. Yeah, there's probably more the government can do, but the government is not used to doing this at this level, right? And maybe they fucked up because they did they did so much with something they're not used to.
But a lot of the refugees they're not even refugees. They're just illegal, like they cross the border with the U.S. and want to claim refugee status.
Right.
And that's the one that JT is deporting. Also, there's some Haitian
the Haitian immigrants coming, or the Haitian refugees who enter the U.S., right? And
yeah,
then
and
go to Montreal or whatever.
yeah, and there's like a lot of them housed in the stadium there in Montreal.
Well, but to be fair, some of the places in the U.S., like if we have, I'm sure we have some sneaking in from Michigan, and quite frankly, Michigan is in rough shape.
Oh man,
Detroit. Well, Detroit is being rebuilt a little bit now. At least there's a lot of community organizations. I mean, Detroit's always been such a spirited
when was
city.
the last time you were there, though?
The last time I was there was 2011, 2000.
It's fairly recent.
No, I
guess.
visited 2013 actually.
Was it still was it a shithole then?
No, a lot of it was cleaned up. What happened was in 2009, I think it was, 2010, they had already started to do some creative projects. I remember the first creative projects, they would just completely wipe out these semi-demolished buildings downtown, which were like, it really looked like an apocalypse when I went to visit in 2009. It was really bad. But even by 2010, they had started like finishing the demolishing somewhat manually. I mean, these buildings were low enough that they could just kind of take just sledgehammers to it with community groups, and then they would plant gardens, and that shockingly made a big difference already. I remember on Woodward Avenue, right downtown. But by 2012, 2013, there were a lot more community organizations doing a lot of creative projects, converting old abandoned homes into community centers, basically providing a lot of services to the people. Now they still have a problem. The last I heard, they were still struggling with tremendous corruption in the city mayor's office. It was just they've always suffered with that. But I was thinking actually more of things like Flint. Flint still has third world living conditions, right? So I mean, that's I understand the refugees coming from that area, at least.
So we're gonna call it a night from interviews from the parking lot.
Sounds good.
I like that, interviews from the parking lot.
It's good chatting with you tonight.